During a raging storm, Army veteran Michael found his handicap spot blocked by an HOA board member's luxury SUV. Karen Brooks brushed him off with cruel mockery, claiming official business gave her special rights. But Michael had proof, the law on his side, and a drone that caught everything. Just wait until you see how her arrogance literally sank, and justice rose to the surface. The sky had been darkening since dawn, a thick gray blanket pressing low over the neighborhood. Thunder murmured somewhere in the distance, and the air smelled like wet asphalt and ozone, one of those storms that didn't just blow through, but settled in. Michael gripped the steering wheel tighter as he turned into his condo complex, windshield wipers struggling to keep up with the rain. He wasn't out for groceries or errands, just returning from physical therapy. His knees ached, his back was tight, and the handicap parking space right outside Building C was his one guarantee of making it home without slipping on wet concrete. But today, it was taken. A white Cadillac Escalade was wedged into the space, angled like it had been shoved in without care. No handicap placard hanging from the mirror, no temporary permit on the dash, just a magnet slapped on the driver's door, already streaking with rain. HOA business. Michael stared for a long second, hoping maybe he was wrong. Maybe the driver had just pulled in. Maybe they'd be back in a moment. But the SUV sat silent, lights off, windshield fogged over. Whoever parked it wasn't in a hurry to leave. He pulled out his phone and opened the HOA directory. The emergency line rang 3 times, then clicked. No voicemail. He tried the board president. No answer. Finally, he tried the general HOA number. Just a recorded message reminding him to leave a comment via email. Michael sat back, the rain hammering harder on the roof of his car. The wipers kept slapping back and forth, a rhythm that made the silence inside even heavier. His condo was only 50 yards away, but that might as well have been 500 when you moved like he did. 2 spinal surgeries and a metal rod in his hip didn't leave room for careless steps. Still, the rain wasn't letting up. The water was starting to collect around the storm drains, climbing up past the curb, dark and fast-moving. He glanced at his phone again. No messages. With a slow exhale, Michael shifted into gear and pulled away, circling to the opposite side of the complex. The closest open space was nearly 3 buildings over. By the time he parked, struggled out of the car, and limped his way through sheets of cold rain to his front door, his jacket was soaked through, and his shoes squished with every step. His hands were trembling, not just from the chill, but from something sharper. It wasn't just the parking spot. It was the message behind it. You don't matter. He peeled off his jacket, water dripping onto the tile, and looked out the window as thunder cracked low across the sky. The white Escalade still sat there, like it owned the pavement. By morning, the rain had drained away, leaving the lot slick and glistening under a pale sun. Storm water still clung to the low areas, forming shallow puddles that mirrored the sky. But the white Escalade? It hadn't moved an inch. Its front tires were now partially sunk into the soft mulch that lined the blue-painted curb. Michael stood by his window and watched her return like nothing had happened. Karen Brooks, vice president of the HOA board, emerged from the clubhouse in a crisp blazer and heels that clicked confidently across the wet pavement. She sipped a large iced coffee, her sunglasses perched high on her head despite the gray morning. She paused by her SUV and glanced at the handicap stenciling on the asphalt, just long enough to register it. Then she rolled her eyes, unlocked the door, and slid inside, like she was above the weather, the paint, and the rules. Michael didn't hesitate. He stepped outside and met her halfway. His movements were slow, deliberate, but steady, earned through months of rehab and the kind of pain that didn't go away with rest. "That's a reserved spot," he said, his voice calm but clear. "You blocked my access, in a storm." Karen looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. But it wasn't concern that crossed her face. It was something sharper, dismissive, like she was trying to figure out whether he was serious or just inconvenient. "You don't look that disabled," she replied, lips curling into a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And I was here on official HOA business, which, frankly, gives me certain leeways. Maybe next time park earlier or bring an umbrella. Before he could respond, she slid into her seat, shut the door, and drove off, tires splashing through the shallow standing water like punctuation on her exit. Michael stood there for a long moment, the cool breeze tugging at the hem of his shirt. It wasn't just the parking spot anymore. It was the certainty in her tone, the casual cruelty of her words, like she'd encountered a minor annoyance, not a fellow resident who had to drag himself through a storm because of her entitlement. Later that afternoon, Michael passed the clubhouse on his way back from the mailbox and heard voices through the half-open door. "She actually came up to me about the handicap spot," Karen said, her voice loud and amused. "If he can yell, he can walk. These people milk disability for perks. Honestly, he should thank me for the cardio." Laughter followed. Not nervous laughter. Agreement. 2 other board members were in the room. Neither corrected her. Michael didn't go inside. He didn't say a word. He just turned and walked away, his hands clenched tightly at his sides. The pain in his back was flaring again, but it was a distant echo compared to the burn of being mocked for something he fought every day just to live with. This wasn't ignorance. It was arrogance. And it wasn't just her. It was everyone who laughed along. The storm rolled in faster this time, thicker, darker, heavier. The sky turned an iron gray by late afternoon, and a deep, rumbling wind swept through the complex like it was clearing its throat before the real damage. But Michael wasn't caught off guard this time. While the board members had gone about their day as if nothing had happened, he had spent his morning on the phone with the city's ADA compliance officer, with the zoning department, and finally with an inspector who confirmed what Michael already suspected. The handicap space outside Building C was officially registered, protected by federal law. Blocking it wasn't just rude, it was a misdemeanor. Karen had violated not only basic decency, but legal statute, Section 681.010 of the state code. And thanks to Michael's habits as a meticulous documentarian, born from years of medical recovery and a growing audience on his rehab vlog, he had every detail captured in crisp, time-stamped video. He hadn't meant to catch her SUV in the shot. His drone had been recording a segment on core strengthening exercises in wet conditions. But there it was, her Escalade, blocking the marked space for hours during 2 separate storms. Even more damning, the footage also showed water pooling unnaturally at the base of the lot, right where the HOA was supposed to have cleared drainage channels. Michael had filed maintenance requests months ago. They'd been dismissed. Now, the camera had proof. By nightfall, the wind had turned savage. Rain lashed against the windows like nails. Thunder cracked directly overhead, and somewhere behind Building C, the retention pond began to rise. Michael stood at his front window, arms folded, watching it unfold. The Escalade was still there, still perched arrogantly in the blue-lined space, tires half submerged. The drainage system, neglected and clogged, could no longer handle the runoff. Water surged over the curb and began to pool around the vehicle like a slow, silent tide. Minutes passed, then the front end of the SUV shifted, just slightly. Michael leaned forward, eyes locked. Another gust of wind, a wave of water from the upper slope, and then movement. The Escalade lifted, awkwardly, like a beast waking from sleep. The nose dipped forward, the rear tires lost traction, and with eerie grace, it floated free of the curb. It drifted sideways, then backward, right into the retention pond. A white monolith bobbing in the muddy basin, headlights flickering weakly against the sheets of rain. Michael didn't cheer. He didn't even speak. He just hit record on his phone. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a strange quiet and the heavy scent of wet earth. A layer of mist still hovered over the retention pond behind Building C, and in the center of it sat Karen Brooks's Escalade, nose down, rear hatch barely visible above the surface. Police tape had been strung along the perimeter some time before sunrise. An officer stood nearby with a notepad, interviewing one of the maintenance workers who'd shown up early. A tow truck idled nearby, but it was clear this wouldn't be a quick pullout. Michael stepped outside, a mug of coffee in hand, his movements slow but deliberate. He didn't need to say anything. The scene spoke for itself. The HOA president, Alan Graves, arrived a few minutes later, visibly rattled. His face was flushed, his shirt half tucked, and he was already on the phone before he reached the pond's edge. He tried talking to the officer, tried gesturing toward the taped-off Escalade, like it was some kind of misunderstanding, but the paperwork had already begun moving. The ADA violation Michael filed the day before had been reviewed and accepted by the city. Karen's illegal parking, caught on 2 separate days, both during dangerous weather, was a clear infraction. A citation had been issued, the drone footage was forwarded to the city inspector and the HOA's insurance provider. When the adjuster reviewed the video and saw the timeline, the blocked signage, and the rising water swallowing the SUV in real time, he shook his head and called it the most expensive lesson in ego I've seen all year. Karen, for her part, tried to recover her footing. She claimed Michael had exaggerated, that the spot wasn't properly marked, that it wasn't about disability, it was about him targeting her position. But the board had seen the footage. They'd seen the timestamp. They'd heard her own words, recorded from the clubhouse, broadcast with perfect clarity. If he can yell, he can walk. By that afternoon, an emergency board session was held. Rare, closed door, unanimous. Karen Brooks was formally removed from her position. And Michael? He received a written apology from the board and the city. The HOA voted to designate a new sign for the handicap space outside Building C, not just marked, but personalized. His name was etched into the metal, and the policy was updated in their official code. Reserved Unit C 104, ADA permanent. No ceremony, no celebration. Just quiet, simple justice. Later that week, a neighbor knocked on Michael's door. She brought a pie and asked if the drone footage was real. Michael smiled and said, "Every frame." Then he closed the door, sat down, and finished his coffee in peace. For the first time in a long while,